Located in central Iraq on the side of the Tigris River, about 124 kilometers north of Baghdad, Samarra is considered to be the largest ancient city known in the whole world. Home of the Al-Askari Shrine, one of the most significant sites of worship for the Shia community. Samarra is one of the 4 Islamic holy cities in Iraq. The city was once a thriving tourist destination for millions of Shia pilgrims annually. 22nd February 2006. The gold tile dome was destroyed and the mosque was severely damaged.
The importance of Samarra, as it's the shrine of 2 of the the Shia Imams, and the place where the alive Imam disappeared, plus the grave of 2 of the ladies of the household of the Holy Prophet, as I will explain later and talk about those characters. This is for the Shia Imami. For the Muslims, the household of the Holy Prophet highly respected by Muslims, and as it includes the shrine of Imam Ali al-Hadi, the son of Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, Al-Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, the son of Imam Ali al-Hadi, and the Sayyida Hakima, the daughter of Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, the sister of Imam Ali al-Hadi, Sayyida Narjis, the wife of Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, and the mother of the alive Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi, and these all belongs to the household of the Holy Prophet. And the Sunni, the Shia, all the Islamic sects and madhahib highly respect the household of the Holy Prophet. Plus they were knowledgeable people. They did serve the Ummah and the Islamic community at that time, and even they had companions, students, followers all around the Muslim world, and they benefited the Islamic heritage. That's why the place of Samarra became highly respected by the Muslims in general and by the follower of Madhab Ahl-Bayt in particular.
Samarra was founded during the Abbasid Caliphate, so we are talking over 1,000 years ago, and it became the capital of the entire Islamic world. So if we were to look at Samarra just as a site of heritage, then there is over 1,000 years of history. We find that the West focuses on something that is 120 years old. They will call it a landmark or a place of significance, and they'll be in the UK it's called it gains listed status, so it means nobody's able to damage it or change its form in any way, and sometimes it becomes a place of attraction. We have something that is over 1,000 years old, and Samarra on just this basis will become very significant, number one. Number two, Samarra hosted scholars, Samarra hosted khulafa, Samarra hosted the imams, Samarra hosted people who came to the center of the Islamic world. For a period of almost 80 years, Samarra was the capital of the Islamic world. In Samarra itself, we have shrines dedicated to the imams. We have places where scholars are buried and important graves. We have the remnants of the old city to the north where the khulafa were based. In terms of the architecture, it's important. In terms of what went on in that life, we want to understand city life as historians or archaeologists. We want to look at Samarra from this aspect. It is also a place where we've had a mixture of people who are followers of the Ahl-Bayt and people who are followers of the school of the Sahaba. We have a city where you have 2 imams, and the current and 12th imam is buried. It was born there, and his fathers are buried there. And the imam was last seen there, and the imam will go back and visit his family there. And it is somewhere there, if we wanted to say salam to the imam, it's probably the best place to go to his home. The imams were buried in Samarra itself. They were buried in their homes. So when we go to visit their shrines, this is the home of the imams. So in terms of the importance to the followers of Ahl-Bayt, it's of extremely high importance, particularly in this modern era when we're trying to reconnect with our imam, the 12th imam. Peace and blessings be upon him. In terms of the followers of the other schools of thought, it is a place of importance to the Islamic world generally. In terms of non-Muslims, then it's a place rich in culture and history, even in terms of science and archaeology, then the city is especially important.
Imams Al-Hadi and Al-Askari were actually buried in their own home, and the holy site is the actual birthplace of the 12th Shia Imam, the awaited Mahdi, and is the last place he was seen before going into occultation.
The place of Samarra is a bit different than other places, as Samarra, which we are talking about, where the shrines, the holy shrine is, it used to be called Al-Askar, and this is a bit further down from Samarra, where the palace of the Abbasid Caliphs Al-Mu'tasim were. As the Mu'tasim expelled Imam Ali al-Hadi from Al-Madinah al-Munawwara to Al-Askar. It used to be like a military camp near Samarra. So the Imam were surrounded by his followers, by his companion, by his students. At the beginning, it wasn't as crowded as it's meant to be, because the two Imams were in exile. At the time of Imam Hassan al-Askari, things became a bit better, communication became a bit easier, the followers start going back and forth from his place in Al-Askar, and even at the late stages of Imam Ali al-Hadi. So we notice that a few of their followers were there, and not only that, many of them were buried there. If we refer to historic books, one of them is known as Ma'athir al-Kubara fi Ahwal Samarra by Marhum Sheikh Dhabih Allah al-Mahallati. It's been written in Arabic. In the second volume, if I'm not mistaken, he talks about the graves of those followers and companions of the Imams, and that probably reflects that there were so many Shia followers of the Madhab Ahl-Bayt were living there.
The Imams, when they were brought to Samarra by the Abbasids, they were taken to an area called Al-Askar, which means the Askar, the garrison of Al-Mu'tasim, who was the first Khalifa who brought the Imams to Samarra. And this was where the soldiers had garrisoned. It was their encampment. And in order to make it difficult for people to come in and out of the presence of the Imam, to visit the Imam, to see the Imam, to have access to him, they decided to have the Imams in a house inside this garrison. So imagine a house surrounded by soldiers, which is probably the most inaccessible place you could find. And in this way, the Khalifa was able to keep an eye on the Imams, to investigate who was coming in and out, what was happening, how was the Imam connecting to his followers. And the Imam Ali al-Hadi salamullah alayhi was buried there when he died. He requested in his will that he be buried in his house. And then his son Imam al-Hasan al-Askari requested the same thing. And Imam al-Hujjah, our 12th Imam, our living Imam salamullah alayhi, was born in that very house. Later on, the Abbasids did not live in this area, of course. Their palaces, the real Samarra, the city of Samarra, is to the north. And after the fall of Samarra, let's say, or after the move back to Baghdad, the area to the north, which is the real city of Samarra, fell into disrepair. People were not interested in going there because the Khalifa did not live there anymore. The whole reason why Samarra became popular was because the Khalifa was there. So when they went back to Baghdad, the Abbasids, people stopped visiting Samarra. The people that worked there left, the civil servants left, the people that were close to the Khalifa left, the markets, the soldiers, everybody left. And so we have the northern part of Samarra became a ghost town. And what remained was the area around the house of the Imams became the Samarra that we have today. People began to visit. People came to study and get barakah by being close to the Imams. People gave a nidhr that they promised to, if so and so happened, if they were granted a son, that they would go and live next to the Imam, for example. Some people came and seeking Imam al-Hujjah, salamullah, so they wanted to be close to where he was last seen, and so on. And over time, during the period of the Buwayhids, which came after the Abbasid period, or the Abbasid real control period, the time when they were really the practicing Khulafa, the Buwayhids were the first to sponsor the building of the shrines. And it was a very simple fashion, a wooden box over where their graves are, and just some wooden doors and entrances around the shrine. So very simple, very basic, something that you could do, in a short amount of time. And over time, every time a wealthy merchant or an alim or some of the civil servants or the politicians who were sympathetic to the school of Al-Bayt came to Samarra, they added something to it. So the wooden encasing then received valuable cloth. And later on, someone decided to put some mud around so that the land would be raised up, so you wouldn't be treading near the grave itself, and so on. It carried on successive times, that every time someone came to Samarra, they would build it up slowly. Even some of our great Muraja contributed to this. Even some people who lived far away and didn't manage to reach Samarra, some of the Shah from Iran or elsewhere, they would contribute to the building of Samarra, and it was stages. We have incidences where, for example, the wood encasing burnt, or there was a flood and part of the shrine was damaged, and after this there was also reconstruction. And perhaps the most influential of these was at the beginning of the 20th century. The Shah of Iran, wealthy and interested in taking credit for rebuilding and reconstructing the Shrine of the Imams, started the last phase of construction that we see today, before the incidents of 2006, and they expanded the shrine. They purchased some of the areas around it, and they included parts of the surrounding areas into the Haram, the sacred area of the Imamain Askariyain Mosque today.
The city of Samarra was built around the holy Shia shrines of the two Imams in Samarra, and during that time many Shias made their way to live around the shrine of their Imams.
Mirza Shirazi immigrated to Samarra in 1880 something, before or after, I can't remember exactly the date, because he died in 1893, but he was there for the last 15-20 years of his life. The Shia population was so high at that time, and he built the town, he built a few schools, and that continued until 1920 or 1915, when Mirza Muhammad Taqi Shirazi, one of his best students, migrated to Karbala with a few of his followers, Sayyid Ismail al-Sadr and Mirza Hussein al-Naini. These were the main students who went back to Karbala, and then Mirza Ali Agha al-Shirazi, the son of Mirza Hassan Shirazi, who went, I think, for a short period to Karbala, then to Najaf. So we noticed that they were Shia, their Hawza was very active, and at other stages also during history, the Shia presence was there. In Karbala and Najaf, the situation is different, because southern Baghdad and the southern part of Baghdad was highly populated by Shia. All of the population were Shia. Northern Baghdad, the Shia were scattered in the villages around Samarra, and we notice until now that up to Balad, where the shrine of Sayyid Muhammad, the son of Imam al-Hadi, it's full of Shia. This probably reflects and explains why the Shia is not vast majority in Samarra, and why it's getting lessened sometime in history.
In April 2003, US, British and other coalition forces led a war on Iraq to get rid of the Ba'athi regime that had been in power for over 25 years. After the fall of this regime, Iraq was in turmoil, without a government.
The political situation after the invasion of Iraq by the coalition forces, and specifically by the American forces, at the start, the political situation was slightly unstable. There was really no plan by the coalition to actually do something about Iraq. They thought that they can come into Iraq and they can take over, and people will be very much pleased with the overthrow. And of course, the Iraqis were very much pleased with the overthrow of the regime Saddam Hussein, but they also wanted a plan that the Americans mostly will actually install a government that can bring prosperity to Iraq and the Iraqi people. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. There was no plan at all. There was a lot of chaos, a lot of looting after the invasion. And so therefore that affected quite a lot the political situation. There was also a political struggle between different parties. There was a struggle between the Shias and the Sunnis and the Kurds and the minorities. But then again, that also affected the security. And one very, very important thing that not a lot of people do recognize regarding this particular issue is that after the invasion in 2003, the doors were open for Al-Qaeda to come into Iraq. Al-Qaeda, remember, they were scattered all over the Arabian Peninsula. They weren't in one particular place. But they found Iraq as an opportunity for them to go in, stay there for a bit, visualize, see and analyze the whole situation, see if it's quite vulnerable, then they come in force and they attack. And of course they did get support from neighboring countries, unfortunately, such as Saudi Arabia, to actually cause chaos and violence in Iraq.
At least 31 people have been killed in the Iraqi capital in a suicide attack on a funeral procession. It brings the death toll from sectarian violence to more than 400 since a political crisis erupted last month. The bomber exploded his vehicle near the group of mourners passing by a small market street in the mainly Shiite Zafaraniya neighborhood of Baghdad. The funeral was for a Shiite estate agent who was killed by gunmen in the city a day earlier. Police say the motive for his murder is not clear.
I'm sure everyone knows that post-2003 Iraq was quite chaotic. It remains to a lesser degree, but in those periods between 2003 and the events of 2006, Iraq was under occupation by various armed forces of other countries, number one. Two, the government itself hadn't yet been appointed by the people. The constitution was in place, but we hadn't had general elections yet before that incident. Three, everybody knows that various armed militias had real power in Iraq. Weapons were awash everywhere. We had remnants of the old regime. We had foreign terrorists. We have people whose political opinions are at conflict with the areas that they live in. So for example, if I live in the northern part of Iraq, yet I support a Shia party from the south, I am at danger myself. So I hold opinions in my area that could lead to my death. And this was replicated all throughout Iraq. So the situation was that the government wasn't fully in control of all the sites, nor all the border posts, nor all the places of civil authority, like for example the airports or the banks, and so on and so forth. So the attack on Samarra in a way seemed logical because it wasn't that well protected. People did not really have the resources nor expect Samarra to be attacked quite brutally in this way. So the situation was that no one person or one state or one side could be blamed because it was Iraq was heavily damaged from all sides, from internal factors and from external factors. And so the situation was quite chaotic, and always when we see there's a chaotic situation, lots of things are damaged and suffer.
22nd February 2006. The gold tile dome was destroyed and the mosque was severely damaged.
There were different accounts to what really happened on the 22nd, on the night of the 22nd of February 2006. One account says that there were at least 6 to 8 Al-Qaeda members came on the night of the 22nd dressed in military uniforms. They handcuffed the guards. They stormed in, they handcuffed the guards, and they took them to a particular place, and they took full control of the whole of the haram of Al-Askariyin. So what they did throughout the night, took them many hours throughout the night, they kept on planting their bombs. And if you go back now to Samarra, you do actually see that they tell you this is the place where they have put or planted this particular bomb, and it's usually in the corners. And that was quite a clever move by these terrorists, because to put them in a particular corner, at every single corner you can maximize destruction. So they put them, and they put a lot of explosives in there. And it took them several hours to take the explosives and put them in this particular place and that particular place. And exactly 5 to 7 a.m. They triggered all these bombs and it all exploded. The interior minister at that time actually gave a similar but sort of a different account as well. He said that they've actually been doing this for the last 4 or 5 days, pre 22nd of February 2006. So they kept on coming in, putting the explosives, leaving, putting the explosives for 4 or 5 days until they put so much explosives in there that the aftermath was immense. I mean, the pictures we saw on the day, on the morning of the 22nd of February 2006, you can see that to bring down this very strong building down to rubbles, and of course that meant that they put so many explosives, and this was a planned a bomb attack that has been studied, I believe, for many months, and definitely been funded by bigger organizations and countries.
لقد أخطأ التكفيريون مرة أخرى بخطوة جبانة يائسة، لكنها مدروسة ومع سبق الإصرار والتصميم لزرع الفتنة والفرقة بين أبناء الشعب العراقي. يتظاهرون بأنهم مطالبين بتنفيذ شريعة الله، ولكنهم يدمرون بيوت الله وأماكن العبادة. أعمالهم تشوه اسم الإسلام عندما يريدون انتشار ورواج الحقد والبغض بين العراقيين، لأن الحقد والكره يولد العنف، والعنف يسبب الفوضى والتشويش. إنهم يقومون بهذه الأعمال التي تقشعر لها الأبدان ويندى لها الجبين باسم الإسلام والمسلمين. لقد حان اليوم لطرد هؤلاء الذين يحاولون أن يفرقوا وحدة صفنا. لقد حان اليوم على العراقيين الشرفاء أن يبنوا ولا يهدموا، لأننا بذلك نحمي شعبنا وأمتنا. وهؤلاء الذين يرتكبون جرائم العنف للانتقام والثأر يصبحون رهائن بيد هذا التنظيم البغيض ويكملون خططه الإرهابية.
The intelligence reports that have come out after this incident point to the fact that the planning was meticulous. It was done well in advance of the attack. It wasn't a random attack. The way that the bombs were placed around the dome, the way that the explosives, the kind of materials used to have maximum effect. This shows that it wasn't a random attack by a disorganized group of armed men who wanted to make a statement. No, rather this was done well in advance. They had detailed plans and blueprints of where or how the structure of the mosque was, where the entrances were, how they could easily place their bombs around the various sites to destroy the dome. The dome, it doesn't escape you that it's probably the biggest dome of all the shrines that we have. The Imam al-Askari Mosque, the dome there was probably the largest one of all the shrines that we have, Karbala, Najaf, Mashhad, elsewhere. So it was constructed in such a way that was actually quite strong because it's a large dome. It was constructed with a double layer, so the onion-shaped dome on the outside that you see, and inside it there is another dome, a secondary dome to support the first dome. And so you have a dome here and a dome above it. You only see the outside one, of course, and there is a space in between. You'd only know that if you had access to the blueprints or somebody who had knowledge of the architecture. And what the terrorists did was to place C4 explosives at various points to bring down the structure. And in this space that we talk about between the external dome and the internal dome. So to cause an explosion, to bring down the dome, rather than just to damage it from the outside, to bring it down fully. And we can see when we look at the imagery of the post-2006, post-22nd February attacks, we can see that the whole middle of the dome has been taken out. And its position, you can see the image in such a way as if someone deliberately carved this bit out. Someone went around and made a mark and said, I want to take all this bit out. Now, some of the reports point to the fact that C4, this type of C4 used after forensic analysis, isn't available to individuals. It is something that only states buy from each other, buy and sell. And so the origin of the C4 must have come from a state, must have come from a country that purchased this. Now, whether they gave this to individuals, whether they armed certain people, or it was sold on the black market, we can't be sure. But the origin of it was that a state had to buy it. Now, how did it get to the hands of individuals is a secondary matter, but we know that at one point a state must have been involved in the attacks on Samarra. The armed group might have been a front, so they might have been acting on behalf of a state or another international player, an actor or an agency. Their intentions were quite clear from the results that happened afterwards. They wanted to cause chaos. They wanted a statement to go out to all the Shia Muslims that nothing is sacred. Not only will we attack men and women and children in the markets, in the schools, we'll behead people and put the videos online, we'll attack your marches to Karbala. Now we're going to attack the most important thing in your lives, your imams, we'll attack those as well. And will cause terrible damage as well. To infuriate the Shia, to try to get a reaction, to increase the cycle of violence. So we can't really point to 100% knowledge of who committed in terms of not the individual that placed the bomb, but the planning and who ordered its execution. That's the most important thing. Where even if you found the 4 or 5 armed people that placed the bombs there, they didn't act on by themselves. There was someone behind them or something behind them. We can't say with certainty, but at one point in it, there is a state or a country involved.
I think we can definitely blame the security, the people, the guards who have actually protected the mosque. But the issue is that you have to go up a level. It's not really the people's problem, it's actually the government's problem. The government pre-2006 had to keep a close eye into what's happening all around that particular area, that particular triangle, as they call it, the Sunni triangle. And unfortunately, as you have a very popular, very famous Shia mosque down there, shrines, and you have majority of the Sunnis, and this is what Al-Qaeda wanted. Al-Qaeda came in to try to trigger this sensitivity, these differences between the Shias and the Sunnis. So they might have had some influence on some of the people who are living in Samarra. But then again, you have to go back to the security forces. Where were they? Didn't they protect? Didn't they actually predict such a thing will happen? Where was the intelligence? Don't we have any intelligence? Didn't we have some sort of intelligence that will tell us there was a planned attack on the Askari shrine? So I wouldn't particularly blame the people of Samarra. I will definitely blame the security forces at that time for the lack of intelligence, the lack of planning into how to protect the Askari shrine. And may I also say that there also some blame on the Iraqi endowment, religious endowment group. Of course, they belong to the government, and their responsibility are the mosques. So we have the Sunni endowment and we have the Shia endowment in Iraq, and it was the responsibility of both.
I was actually in Edinburgh because at that time I was doing my PhD there before I moved somewhere else, and I had the news from my supervisor at that time, Dr. Andrew Newman. He called me, and then we had a meeting regarding my dissertation, and then we end up spending the whole session talking about the demolition, and it was a big issue, and easily you can feel that this is going to be the beginning of series of problems. What has happened, something clearly will affect every single Shia, Imami, and even Muslims, because if we notice the reactions by the Muslims, all of them were they well responded. And I do remember that Dr. Newman at that time, he was also so keen, and we had a good guess that this is gonna be a beginning of a serious problem and series of problems.
I think the religious authorities could have put more pressure on the government to either put a force around Samarra to protect the shrines, or to permit the religious authorities themselves to use their own men to guard the shrines, because we hear of the attack that only a few men were guarding the shrine at the time. And in those days, when we know the sectarian violence was quite high, we would have expected a bit more vigilance. So there is in hindsight, a lot of benefit to saying, we should have done so and so and so that might help in future attacks, to prevent future attacks. But we know definitely that the security apparatus was understaffed. We know with certainty that if we had had dozens more men protecting that shrine, that the attack wouldn't have happened. If we had better intelligence, that the attack wouldn't have happened. If we had better relations with the people that lived around Samarra, that they would inform us if any attack were to happen, or to prevent any attacks, then we could have stopped what was happening. But like I say, this hindsight knowledge is useful for trying to prevent future attacks.
The bombing of Al-Askari shrine increased the tension between Shia and Sunnis in Iraq. Even though the government and the scholars in Najaf tried their best to enforce peace in Iraq, but did this bombing damage any chance of peace?
When this happened on the 22nd of February 2006, there was a slight delay in the government reaction, unfortunately. The government didn't react very quickly. There was, after a few hours of this, some of the Shias went out on the streets, did some sporadic killings of the Sunnis in Sunni areas, and same thing, vice versa. Some Sunnis started killing the Shias, which is exactly what Al-Qaeda wanted. And there was supposed to be, the government should have actually imposed a quick curfew. When that happened, impose a quick curfew. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. It happened later on. But that in particular instance, that particular time, they should have imposed a quick curfew to stop these violence. And these violence were the start of a massacre between the Sunnis and the Shias in 2006, and then went on to 2007. So it was a delayed reaction, although the Prime Minister at that time came out and said that, this is Al-Qaeda who've done this. This is their motive. They want to separate between the Sunnis and the Shias, and they want to cause a civil war. They want for all of us to divide. They want Iraq to divide. They have different countries. They're fulfilling different countries' agenda and things like that. So he did warn the Iraqi people. But I believe that a quicker reaction, imposing a curfew on that particular day and a few days after that, would have been much more appropriate.
Everyone was shocked and upset, and if we go back to documentary films, we can notice that Alhamdulillah, the Maraji' were at that time Ayatollah Sayyid Sistan, Ayatollah Al-Udma Sayyid Sistan, and Ayatollah Al-Udma Sayyid Al-Hakim, and Ayatollah Al-Udma Sheikh Al-Fayyad, Sheikh Bashir. They met and they were start calming the Muslim and the Shia population, and that has great influence in stopping the kind of revenge actions to be taken by the Shia and even by some Muslims who were upset and sad about what happened.
After the bombings in 2006, there was some sort of good intelligence in Iraq, which pointed the fingers towards two main people. The first person was called Fakhr Muhammad Ali. Fakhr Muhammad Ali was caught while he was actually trying to do an operation, as they call it, against the military on a checkpoint, and they caught him there. He was injured, and they caught him, and around 18 of the other people they caught as well. And Fakhr Muhammad Ali confessed that he was involved in the Samarra bombing. And he also gave some sort of directions towards who others were involved. But the main head, the mastermind of this operation in Samarra on the 22nd of February 2006 was someone called Haytham al-Badri. Haytham al-Badri was the mastermind, one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda during in Iraq during that time. And with good intelligence and of course with the help of the Iraqi people, they found Haytham al-Badri and he was killed in August 2007. And of course, Fakhr Muhammad Ali, the government later on said that they hanged Fakhr Muhammad Ali for his crimes.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. هذا الشباك الثاني عم طلع اليوم الحمد لله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يلا ابويا صل على محمد وآل محمد. بارك الله بكم بارك الله بكم. وقفوا بصف ذاك على الحائط.
I think Samarra is very important for us, and it needs a lot of, we need to raise the awareness, and I don't think enough. Now I think it's not as bad as it used to be, but we need to raise awareness, we need to raise attention of the followers of Ahlul Bayt to the importance of Samarra, because it's been, I wouldn't like to say ignored, but it's been left for a long time. And that's why we asked for the conference, and we held the conference in the year 2008. We tried to collect as much information as we can about the history of the place before Mirza Shirazi, because the Shia was living in Samarra and was quarter or 1/3 of the population before the migration of Al-Mirza Shirazi. Clearly, the migration of Mirza Shirazi strengthened the presence of the Shia there, and the house has been transferred to Samarra, and we noticed that so many scholars were there. Mirza Hussein Nouri, خاتمة المحدثين صاحب مستدرك الوسائل, أبو زرق الطهراني, Sayyid Muhsin al-Amin. I've been mentioning names, and until early 60s they were teaching in Samarra. Sheikh Mujtaba al-Ankarani used to teach in the Rawaq, and others, Sayyid Murtada al-Askari, they were all came from the town of Samarra and the Hawza of Samarra. Unfortunately, more attention and more kind of care should have been paid and given to Samarra, and I hope that in the future this will take place. During the conference we had a few guest speakers from all around the world, and we collected all the lectures together, and we published a book which is the Shia of Samarra. It's been published by IB Taurus. I think the information we try to collect is valuable, because it shows the history, the architecture, the history of the house, and the history of the town of Samarra, and we tried to keep that well documented.
Unfortunately, the bombings in 2006 has affected Iraq dramatically. It was the intention of the terrorists, of Al-Qaeda members, to cause such a long-lasting effect. And unfortunately, and I say this with so much bitterness, that they have caused a long-lasting effect. They caused a huge civil war in Iraq. Many thousands of people died as a result. And until this moment, unfortunately, you know, there are some sort of sensitivities between the Shias and the Sunnis, created, I believe, because of that that conflict that happened in 2006 and 2007 and 2008 as well. Although now it is much better. There's a lot of cooperation between the Sunnis and the Shias, and also in the government we have quite a few Sunnis as ministers and things like that, and even between the Iraqi people themselves.
Before even allowing any practical steps to be taken to contain the massive impact of such an act, the shrine was bombed again on 13th June 2007.
Unfortunately, after the first bombings in 2006, there wasn't a plan to secure the Haram. There was, of course, the blame is on the security forces, the government, etc. There wasn't a proper plan to actually secure the place. And Al-Qaeda had second ideas. They said, look, you can't stop us first time. We'll show you we can get in second time as well. And they work with money, trying to tell people, look, we'll give you that much money, just let us go through there and do this and that. And unfortunately, they went in. But after the second bombing, which put down the two minarets, the incumbent Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, he visited the place straight away after that. Of course, he imposed curfew straight away after that. And he went himself to the shrines. And he managed to set up a committee while he was there to take care of the rebuilding. And most importantly, he dedicated a whole troops or group in the defense ministry to protect from all angles the shrines of Samarra, so that no one can actually come and do what they did before. So there was people assigned specifically to come and protect the shrines, and of course there were a lot of checkpoints set. So as if you've been to Karbala and Najaf, and if you haven't, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the opportunity to go and do ziyarah there, you can see that there's no cars allowed to reach the Haram. And there are a lot of checkpoints as you go through, a lot of body searches and things like that, even car searches as you reach the last point where a new car can go. It's the same thing now in Samarra as well. So they've implemented the same thing. No car can go near the Haram. A lot of body checks and a lot of security. So alhamdulillah, that was effective.
Since the two bombings in Samarra in 2006 and 2007, the reconstruction of the holy shrine has taken place to ensure that the gold dome of the Imams Al-Hadi and Al-Askari rebuilt, and to try and bring some peace into that area.
I think that we have to give credit to multiple sides here. First of all, the Waqf al-Sunni was aware that they can no longer control this shrine. It was unfair for Waqf al-Sunni to control the Shia shrine. So they accepted, even though they protested, they accepted the fact that the Shia Waqf has to gain authority of this site, number one. Number two, I think the people of Samarra realized the damage had been done to their economy, to their prospects, and they since then have tried their best, I would say, to prevent any future violence in that area. Number three, the Waqf Shia has done well in terms of the reconstruction. It might have been slow, but they have attempted to preserve or keep as much of what was left out of the damage as possible. So I know for a fact that the bricks or some of the rocks and stones that were left in the rubble after the bombing, they reused it in the construction. Rather than getting rid of this and sending it off to waste, they reused it in the reconstruction of the shrine. I know for a fact that they tried their best to have almost the same dimensions and aspect of the dome as possible. I know that they expanded the size of the shrine to cater for larger numbers of visitors. I know that the Waqf Shia has purchased land, land surrounding the shrine, has purchased homes and businesses and so on to try to expand the site of the shrine to give a better experience to the visitors. I know it's been compensating businesses and homeowners around this area. It has given more jobs to the people of Samarra. I think the government has done well as well to proceed in an efficient manner with the reconstruction, but without making this a political issue, to use it in elections and so on and so forth. Rather, the work has been done professionally. I know UNESCO was involved for a period of time with the reconstruction. I know the quality of the engineers and architects involved has been quite high.
I spoke recently to the administrative manager of the rebuilding of Samarra Mosque, and he spoke about the great progress they have actually made in rebuilding Samarra now, the mosque itself, and in fact actually rebuilding Samarra as well, because it's a quite in a funny way you can say that although the bombings were quite atrocious, some sort of positive things did come out of these bombings, which is now the whole city is actually being rebuilt. A lot of hotels are being rebuilt, restaurants. They want to make it as a very vibrant city, and of course the dome is nearly complete. The Golden Dome, the minarets are nearly complete. I spoke to him and he said within a few months, inshallah, everything will be complete. And a lot of people have actually given their time. A lot of people have actually funded this, and the main funding comes, of course, from the government, from the Iraqi endowment, the Shia Iraqi endowment, and there's been a lot of throughout this process. There's been a lot of support from different people, and Samarra is actually rising up now, and it needs to rise up because Samarra historically was once a capital city of Islam. If you go there, Samarra is a very, very beautiful city. It's got the river Tigris near it. It's a World Heritage Site. I mean, I remember when I went there, I saw still the remains of the Abbasid castles there. You still can see them very clearly. You can see them, and it doesn't, by the way, just attract Muslims. It also attracts people who are very much interested in ancient things, it's a very important place for Muslims, specifically for the Shias, and of course we're going to pilgrimage towards Samarra. So strategically, it's an important place, and it's the rebuilding now of Samarra, I think, will bring some sort of happiness for those people who wanted Iraq to get back to normality, and will strike hard against those people, Al-Qaeda and all these Ba'athis and all these anti-Shia people who really wanted to hurt the Iraqi people, and specifically the followers of Ahlul Bayt, and will strike hard on them to see that the rebuilding of Samarra. And alhamdulillah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep Samarra secure, and that's very important, because as I said, the area is not, the population of the area may not 100% sort of favor or take care of these particular shrines, like what in the Karbala and Najaf. So we need we need all the mu'mineen to do constantly dua to help the people to protect these two imams.
وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء.
I think the Golden Dome represents a number of important things for people all over the world. Number one, it represents that the Iraqi people will always have hope. They have suffered tens of years, decades now, and before then, but recently they've suffered heavily. And so seeing the damaged shrine of Samarra had a negative effect on the perception of Iraqis themselves and other people of Iraq itself. So seeing the shrine again back in its glory will tell the whole world that Iraq will be rebuilt, that Iraq will be preserved, and that Iraqis themselves do have hope. So that's an important statement. Number two, I think it's an important economic statement that Samarra is going to do business. Pilgrims are welcome anytime. Even non-Shias are welcome to come and spend their time, come and see Samarra, come and spend your money, come give your allegiance to your imams, come and visit this place. It's open for business and will welcome you at any time. It's an important economic statement and a statement to people in the Middle East generally. Three, I think, is an important statement for the general Sunni-Shia relations that the imams represent the final chapter of our history, connecting it to the 12th Imam. And this home of the Imams, this place where the Imam, our current Imam, is born, this place where he can call his home, is rebuilt to a standard that we can say our Imam would be happy with. And because we believe he is an Imam for not just the Shia, he's an Imam for all of mankind. So the message out to Muslims in Iraq is that rebuilding Samarra is in a way telling the Imam, we're ready to understand you better, we're ready to reconnect with you more, we're ready to reach out to you more. I think that's an important statement as well. Finally, for the followers of Ahlul Bayt, it pains us to see some of our shrines damaged. In Al-Baqi, for example, we hear about the shrines in Damascus and elsewhere in history. It pains us to see that this place where these men who are buried purely, attacked out of hatred, it's something that goes against all humanity. You would protect a shrine, you would protect a tree that is 1,000 years old, yes? You would protect a book that is 1,000 years old. How about a place where somebody who is the grandson of the Prophet, somebody who is a living Imam, somebody who had influence on millions of people till today, we read their words, we pay special attention to their actions, we would aspire to be followers of them. And for having this dome over their site, the Imam himself suffers. He's attacked, and their followers are attacked, and the pilgrimages stop. So for us, the Shia, we've had a history of witnessing this. So finally to see the dome back up in its glory and people freely going to Samarra in all safety and in all convenience, I think gives us a message that, alhamdulillah, things have improved, things are better now. And for us as a Shia to be confident that when we reach out to other people, hopefully, and we wish inshallah, that will be rewarded with better relations, rather than us reaching out and going for better relations and trusting in other people and continually being disappointed and our faith and our heritage and our culture being attacked. So inshallah, it's a message of positivity for all sides, us, the school of the Ahlul Bayt especially.
في كربلاء واحد بالمدينة في كربلاء واحد بالمدينة والله يوم الحسن مشدوه قبره مهدمه أي رحم الله من نادى وإماما تفرقوا عنك وصار الشمل تبديد تفرقوا عنك وصار الشمل تبديد واحد دفن عندك وواحد عنك بعيد واحد دفن عندك وواحد عنك بعيد نصبوا يا زهرة اليوم في بيتك عزية نصبوا يا زهرة اليوم في بيتك عزية